Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda and I'm so glad that you could join me today. Today we're going to be talking about one of the holidays in December that is most widely known. It is celebrated by millions and its roots were really positive. It's one growing up that I celebrated. And as I did more research, I was surprised to find out the amount of information that I didn't know regarding Christmas. Do you think you know everything about Christmas? Let's take a look. So, many people think they know all about Christmas. I thought I knew a majority of what Christmas had to offer. And then I started researching for this presentation. And like I said before, the intro, I was vastly mistaken. So let's learn about it together. So we know that at its root, Christmas is supposed to be the day that Christians celebrate the birthday of Christ, when Christ came to the world. And Christ is special because, according to Christians, he is God's son. He is infallible, which means he doesn't have any sin, and he died to save the world. Okay. It is widely celebrated today on December 25th. But did you know that it wasn't always celebrated on December 25th? As researchers have seen, the earliest accounts estimate that Jesus' birthday was sometime in the spring or summer. And they credit that to the shepherds were out tending to their sheep in the fields. Why would they do that in December? December is typically a more cold time of year, and that would be a time where the sheep would be in an enclosed space, so they would be easier to tend to. They wouldn't be out in the fields. Okay, did more research, and I was startled to find out that in the 4th century, the Romans actually chose to move the celebration from the spring summertime to December. Why did they choose to move it? They chose to move it to align with the end of harvest and the winter solstice, which is a pagan holiday that many people in the region celebrated. They thought if they moved it, it would be more widely accepted and more practiced, and that's what they wanted them to go to. So they said it was quote unquote good timing, because at that time it was common practice for, if you have cattle, that you would slaughter a bunch of them before winter so that you would have meat to eat for the winter time. So they decided December would be good because then you would have fresh meat, okay? And the grapes and grains that you harvested in fall, it had enough time to ferment. And now, in late December, it was good for drinking. So they thought mid to end December would be a good time. Yeah, it also aligned with the season of Yule, which again is part of the pagan holiday. It's 12 days long, and they just thought it was a good time. Now, the date of December 25th was not officially established until the late 330s, and it was established by Pope Julius I. He is known as the one that selected the date for Christmas. And that's all he had to say about it, was that was the date that it was. It made the most sense to him. Okay. It also surprised me to find out that when they moved it to December, it also was paying homage to a German tradition. The Germans were very afraid of this pagan god named Odin, terrified of him, quite honestly. They believed that he was such a terror. He would fly through the air at night. Sound familiar? And he would survey all of his people, and he would discern after observing them if they were good or if they were bad. If they were good, they were allowed to prosper. If they were bad, they were deemed to perish. Okay. Now, people were so terrified at this time of him that they would decorate their houses to appease him. Now, decorating their houses doesn't mean with Christmas lights like we know now. They might put candles in the window. They might have trees that they decorated. They would have things they might hang on their door. Simpler traditions than what you see today. There weren't any inflatables or anything like that. But that's what they were doing. They were decorating in order to appease him and also scare him away, thinking that there was fire and he would be afraid of that. Either way, they were trying to get him to avoid their area. And that was very interesting for me. I didn't know anything about the pagan god Odin. Didn't know anything about that. And I had heard rumors that Jesus' birthday was apparently really in spring or summer. But I didn't really think much about those rumors. I thought they were just that, rumors. But to find out that they purposefully moved it, and then a pope said, oh yes, this is the day, that surprised me. If somebody was supposed to be the Son of God and the Savior of the world, I feel like that date would have been mentioned somewhere. That surprised me. But moving on. So it was interesting how that date came to be. Now, it is important to note that Christmas, as we know it now, wasn't really celebrated like this anywhere else in the world. At the beginning, there were the pagan gods in Europe and things like that they kind of acknowledged, but it was more about the winter solstice. When the people fled to America seeking religious freedom, then a lot of people didn't celebrate Christmas at all. They didn't acknowledge it. They wanted religious freedom. Pilgrims in particular didn't want anything to do with the pagan gods, so they didn't. They didn't celebrate Christmas. Easter was more important than Christmas. They focused on Jesus' rise, not Jesus' birth. And so that was a big shift. It was not a thing in the United States. For a time, even it was outlawed to be practiced in the United States because people were so fearful about crossing that freedom of religion line. They didn't want it here. They didn't. Now, in 1819, things started to change. There was a man named Washington Irving, and he wrote a series of different stories. And these were stories about an English manor, and he would give different scenarios and that these people were celebrating Christmas. He did so to kind of enlighten people and liven their spirits, because they were just experiencing great turmoil. There was an economic depression going on. There was Napoleonic Wars. There was the War of 1812 that was just finishing. They had been through a lot. Washington Irving decided, you know what? People just need to have a spirits raised. I'm going to create this story, and it's going to leave them with feel-good feelings, and it's going to make them feel all warm and cozy, and it will lighten their spirits. What people didn't know, that these stories that he was creating, he was completely making up customs and traditions. They had never been practiced before anywhere. They hadn't. But Americans clutched to them. because they needed something to feel good about. So they clutched to them and they did different traditions. They decorated a tree. They shared presents. They sang songs to people, things like that. It was shocking to me to find out that Christmas as we know it today is very much an American thing. Very much. We have created traditions because we needed to fill a cultural need. So for example, I have a German background. Okay, so in my household growing up, we had a Christmas tree and we had St. Nick's stockings and we had this little glass pickle ornament on the tree. And I was told that all these things were part of my German tradition. They weren't. I know now that they don't have anything to do with the German traditions. They don't. They have great stories behind them. They have great reasonings, and they're good stories, but their facts are not facts. And that was like a gut punch for me when I found that out. I found that out, and it took a holiday that I once loved, Christmas, and I have some disdain for it now because I know it was made up. And I don't like being played as a fool. I don't care for that. Learning more about it, there's different traditions. For example, I talked about the pickle. There's also the legend of the candy cane. There's many different stories about why it came to be, and it all boils down to commercialism. It was a candy maker who was trying to sell more product. So he made up the story of, oh no, this is the hook. And it's like, because Jesus was a shepherd, and you flip it upside down and it's a J, and it's red and white because he was pure and he died for the sins of the world. And that's why it's striped. And there's all these reasonings behind it. They're great stories, but it's a commercialized product. There is nothing in the Bible that says about a candy cane. There's not, and it's frustrating to me. The Christmas tree. I remember growing up, we were told the Christmas tree is made out of an evergreen tree because it's the only tree that does not lose its leaves. Just like Jesus is the only person who remains true and steadfast throughout all time. The Christmas tree is decorated with either a star or an angel because the star led the shepherds to Jesus, and the angel told the story of the great news. So that's why they have the star or the angel on top. The tree is decorated with bright colored bulbs and lights to remind us that Jesus brings light and joy into the world. And it's our job to share it with the world. Again, it's a great story. It's just not true. It's disheartening to know this. Even the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, I'm guessing you know that one. It's really, really long. It's not about Christmas. I know. It's about a season of Yule. The season of Yule that aligns with the winter solstice, which is a pagan holiday. So people are singing songs about Christmas that most of them are written by Jewish people. They're doing practices that are made up completely by Americans, and they think they're better because they're celebrating Christmas. And that's disheartening to me because I know different now. And I feel duped in many ways. I don't care for it. When I researched and I was learning more about Santa, I knew that growing up, it was that there was Saint Nick and there was Santa. And I understood that around the world, different people called Santa different things, and he may look different ways. But I was surprised in my research to find out that when Santa first made his appearance in America, he was depicted as an elf, which is Swedish custom. It wasn't until the Coca-Cola ad came out in 1931 that Santa was human-sized. He was dressed in red and white to resemble Saint Nick. And he had different things associated with him, again, to resemble Saint Nick. But the Santa image was created by Coca-Cola. That's disheartening. That's disheartening to me that kids today are so excited for essentially this mascot or this cartoon character. And that's what they get excited about. We've lost the true meaning of what Christmas at one time was supposed to be. Rudolph, the most famous reindeer of all, he didn't even exist until 1939. 1939 is when he existed. So Santa, as we know it today, was without his most famous reindeer for 8 years. Did you know that the reindeer Rudolph was created by Robert L. May to go along with a poem he wrote in the Montgomery Ward catalog? And the poem was created to, quote unquote, lure customers in for Christmas. It's all marketing. It's all commercialism. And that makes my stomach curdle. I can't handle it. Christians, even at the end of the Christmas holiday, they celebrate something called Epiphany. It's typically on January 6th that this occurs. They can't even agree exactly what Epiphany is. Some say that Epiphany is the day when they celebrate the baptism of Jesus. And some say Epiphany is when the wise men finally reached Jesus. Now, both accounts we know to not be true. We know that it took more than a couple of days for the wise men to get to Jesus in Bethlehem. And we also know that Jesus wasn't baptized when he was a baby. So both of those are not true. The idea of Christmas, I like. I like the idea that you're supposed to be kind to each other. You should bring peace on earth. That you should be kind to everybody. That you have light that lights up the darkness in your life, which is late December. That I like. I don't like the association to things that didn't happen. It bothers me that all this stuff was created and they're trying to twist it and turn it to make it fit Jesus. I don't like being cattle prodded along. That bothers me. Did you know that for a while there was a push to, instead of writing out Christmas, it was Xmas. X is just the first letter of Christ's name in Greek, but people viewed Xmas as more politically correct. So they thought that that would be better. Now, today, people acknowledge and celebrate Christmas in many different ways. Some people celebrate it strictly from a religious standpoint, and they'll go to church and they'll have a nativity set at their house, like a small figurines that tell the story of Jesus. Some people will have a Christmas tree. Some people will have big parties and give lots of gifts. some people focus on Santa and Rudolph. And some people just celebrate the joy of being a kid again. And they see Christmas as more of like a rekindling of the childlike soul in all of us. I'm not opposed to people bringing out joy. I'm not opposed to people making their lives happier. Certainly not. I'm not opposed to people doing traditions because that's what they're used to and that's what they enjoy. What I am opposed to is being told, oh, this is about this, when in actuality, it's not. It's not about Jesus' birth. It wasn't even celebrated in America for a long time. It first came back around in the 1800s. We changed it and made it more commercial in the 1900s. And now it's become a season of gimme instead of a season of blessing. Christmas was my favorite holiday growing up. I loved the lights. I loved the songs. I loved the general feeling when you would go to a store. And unfortunately, all of that now for me is tainted. I will still drive by a Christmas light display and I can remark on how beautiful it is. I can hear a song in a store and still smile because I remember all the words of it. I can remember experiences growing up where we would sing. We played a game called Name That Tune, where my family with our limited piano skills would attempt to plunk out a song and you had to figure out what the song was. There are many traditions that my family has created that don't have anything necessarily to do with Christmas itself. And those I will always cherish. But after my research, it was shocking to find out how little I knew about the Christmas that we celebrate today. So, there we have it. One more step in my long journey, a little more knowledge to share with you. Until next time, bye-bye.